All right, Ray. So we have all these dealerships that are loading up on inventory right now, both on the new car side and on the used car side. I know at my dealership, we've had some weaker sales months, and because of that, we are stacking up more inventory, and it's probably something that's going to continue to happen across both the new car dealers and the used car dealers as we get more to this normalcy, kind of in the car market. So you have an interesting perspective because you're from the new car industry and I'm from the used car industry. So let's talk about inventory management and how would you go about managing your inventory with what some of these dealerships are going through right now with the increased amount of inventory they have sitting on their lots?
Well, when I was a new car manager, I kept track of what my inventory was on hand, what my incoming inventory was over the next 60 days, what my turn rate was, how many I was average selling per day, so that I could project out what I would actually need. And if I saw, looking at my numbers, I saw inventory building up and sales slowing down, and allocation still being the same. At that point, I might say, and many times I did say to the manufacturer, not going to need everything that you've allocated in this, let's say the TL at the moment, because TL sales might have slowed down. I would always look at it and know what my daily turn rate was for every model of vehicle that we sold. And so I would keep close tabs on my inventory. And then I could run, and I would run typically once or twice a week, an aged inventory report so that I could see what the age was of every vehicle that I had in stock. And then I could start putting spiffs on vehicles that had been sitting around too long. Typically, I wanted to have a 75 to 90-day supply of new cars. If I saw I had some that had been sitting there for 120 or 150 or 180 days, well, those were spiff vehicles that I paid salespeople extra to. Hell, sometimes I'd pay them just to show them. Okay, I'll give you $10. I want to see you drive by with a customer in the car, and that's one of the aged ones, and I'll pay you $10 just for that. And then there'd be, even a bigger spiff if you actually got the customer to buy the car. So I was always working on ways to keep my aged inventory to a minimum, and moving my fresh inventory quickly. So I constantly, I mean, that's all I constantly looked at the age of my inventory and put spiffs on the old cars, and paid a greater minimum on an older car than I would on a younger car. Things like that.
So I hear what you're doing from the perspective of your employees and who is actually showing the cars or whatever. But what did you do on price? Were you just so much more negotiable? If there was a customer that was even remotely interested in that car, you just made them buy it. What was the play there once you actually got one of your employees to get someone to sit down on one of these cars?
If there was an interest in one of the older cars, and the person who had shown the interest actually had the ability to be able to complete a transaction. It was, I think I told you this last week, it was my job not to screw it up. So if that person didn't go home with that car, that was on me. Okay. And if then I was the one that screwed it up if they didn't. So I would I mean, listen, it wasn't like just because they didn't know necessarily it was an aged car. So it wasn't like hello, let me drop my drawers. You work it like a typical car deal, and you start high and you work your way down. And if they were particularly tough to close, working the price down, you worked it down. I mean, you tried to get it done in 3 or 4 passes at most. And what do I mean when I say 3 or 4 passes? That's 3 or 4 times where you negotiate back and forth with the customer, and you whatever you need to do at that point, you make the deal. You You give the customer a reason to say yes. And if it meant losing some money, I lost the money. I needed to get the car off my books.
That's interesting. You say 3 or 4 passes. So my wife and I went to a Honda dealership not all that long ago, and we negotiated for a Honda Odyssey.
Uh-huh.
And I told them what I would pay for it, and there was only 1 pass. So did I get screwed? Did I pay too much for this car, or
perhaps?
Now, what I will say is that I circled it twice and looked at them whenever I did it. So does that count for an extra pass? Maybe
I could.
And,
did you tell him what you did for a living?
I did. He did know that I was a car dealer, so maybe that helped.
Yeah, maybe there was some professional courtesy there, but I doubt it.
We did get 10% off of MSRP. From what I've heard, that's a good deal. So,
yeah.
But it worries me that there was only 1 pass. I don't even know what that means, but there was only 1 of them.
Well, salespeople are told to the first proposal for the deal comes from the manager, not from the customer. So when a customer says, "This is what the salesperson's trying," no, don't tell me, because my manager, he has been. I haven't seen him like this. I don't know. I've been here 3 years. I've never. It's like I guarantee you, the price he's going to give you, it's going to shock or amaze you. Okay, I guarantee it. And the reason I could guarantee that is because, well, I knew that the price we were going to give was going to be high, and that, you would be shocked and amazed that we would ask that much money. But I didn't want the original offer to come from the customer, because the customer is always going to give, as much as we would give you a high ball offer, the customer is always going to give you a low ball offer. So you want to start from the highest place you can and work your way down. You don't start at the bottom and try and work your way up. It is so much harder to move a customer from a low price point to a higher price point. I'm not saying it can't be done. It can. It's just a lot harder. So you want to start up here and work your way down. And so the first pass is up here. And, by the third pass, you're down here. And so, it's typically there's 3, no more than 4 proposals as to what the pricing should be, going back and forth.
Yeah, and my wife just put it in the chat. We were not even planning on buying that day. He said, we were planning to look that day. Brandon told me privately that he was going to see if he could get 10% off. But since there was no way that was going to happen, it was fine. So they took it. So they must have needed to sell that van, or we're suckers.
One of the two.
And I'm maybe both. So let's talk about what I do on my used car dealership. I sell cars that are $5,000 and under. So, all right. So all of you watching it here, I know most of you are not subscribed, so I need you to hit that subscribe button. Whatever we need to do to get you to hit that subscribe button, Ray will do it. So just hit it for us and let us know what he needs to do down in the comments to get you to subscribe. What we do is we get a car in, we get a recon, we get cleaned up, pictures posted, everything like that. And we have day 1 that car hits the lot. And my sales manager goes 2 weeks. If that car doesn't have any attention or doesn't get, it's not bought, then we lower that price by $500. And then we wait another 2 weeks. And if that car hasn't sold again, then we lowered another $500. Then wait 2 more weeks. And if the same thing, we lowered another $500. We find that price point of where we can actually sell that car. So you can do the math. We sell cars $5,000 and under. We make on average about $1,200 per car. Mm-hmm. So you can go ahead and see, if I have a car for 30 days, I'm ready to get rid of that thing. I bought that thing wrong, and I'm not going to make any money on this thing. So that's typically we want to turn a car before 14 days. But if we keep that thing longer than 30 days, then we're doing something wrong. We're either breaking even, or we're probably losing a little bit of money on that car. And I'm so uptight about this that when we have our print sheet where I see all my prices, the cars that we have the longest are at the top of my price sheet. So I see everything that's the oldest at the top whenever we print it out, and it's very important. Even though I'm not on floor plan, I'm not paying any interest on these cars. I know that stale inventory is a bad thing. Not to say that okay, it's just something that nobody wants or we're at the wrong price point, but for used cars. Lot rot that can happen on new cars also happens on used cars, but it happens much quicker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happens faster. And I will tell you this, at most new car dealerships, they have a used car department as well. And most used car departments operate under a aging policy for their used cars, somewhere typically usually between 60 and 90 days. And a lot of stores, it's a strict 60-day turn policy. You have either retailed it by 60 days, or on the 60th day, if you have not, it is off to the auction, and whatever the store gets, the store gets. It's just that simple. And I have worked for owners who had what I call the fine wine aging process, where they just thought everything got better with age, and they would hold on to them forever until they had the only one left in America, and somebody was going to pay what he wanted. But that is the exception to the rule. Most dealerships have either a strict 60, at the latest a strict 90-day turn policy on their vehicles, on their used vehicles. You either sell it retail by 60 days or the 90 days, and if you don't, then it's off to the auction and you take whatever you get.
And I will say for us, there is a exception to the rule, and it is January and February, because we know that tax time's right around the corner. And once we start selling cars in tax time, so we go. It's weird in the used car market, especially for mid-tier to lower tier dealers like myself, where we go from the slowest time of the year right into the fastest time of the year. So we go December, January, nobody's buying cars. No one has any money. Everyone's spent money on buying presents for everyone, and they don't have any money. And then the tax checks come from the government, and now everyone has their tax time ballers. So they have all this money coming in, and they come and they spend it on cars at all of these used car dealerships, and then dealers go to the auctions and pay crazy money. So we can't replenish our inventory after we sell it, because the prices at the auction are so high. So we go on a vacation for about 3 or 4 weeks of buying a lot of vehicles after we hit this time period. So that's all that to say is that in January, even if we buy something on January 1st and it sits for 30 days, we don't change the prices at that time, because we know that we're not going to be able to replace it on the other end. And I'm worried for this year, because inventory at auctions sucks. I mean, it's awful right now. So all the inventory that we sell before tax time gets here, when tax time gets here, prices are going to go higher than what they typically go, because the amount of inventory that's there at auctions, because people aren't buying new cars, so they're not taking in trade-ins, is terrible. And it's going to get even worse at tax time, because all these dealers are going to rush to the auction after, for whatever reason, it surprises them every freaking year that people get tax checks and they come buy cars. So they empty their lots, they don't prepare for it, and then they rush and pay too much at the auctions. I'm not going to do that, but it's going to be bad this year.
I do have a question for you. I know that September was slower for you than you would have liked. We're 15 days into October. What has October looked like so far?
We've knocked the cover off the ball. I don't know if September was just a blip. I don't know if it was an inventory problem for us coming out of a strong August. But I think we've already made more money at this point than we did last month in half the month. Right at it.
And Alex bought 9 at the auction.
Yeah, we got 9 cars today. Wow. So I think it was an inventory problem at the beginning of last month, because we went back and looked at it, and we were a lot lighter at the beginning of September than we were at the beginning of October. So that makes me feel good about at least my side of the car market, because if we have the inventory here, we're able to sell it. It was weird at the end of September because we had a lot of inventory. I had 3 rows of inventory, and we still had half a week or so where just nobody came and bought. And then right when October hit, the beginning of October, we sold a ton of cars. So I mean, like I said, we've already made just about the same amount of money in half a month right now as we did all month last month.
Well, good for you. I'm glad to hear it.
And Igor said that September was slow for everyone. October is a bit better month for most franchise dealers. It's still slower than historically Ray. And that's what we've heard.
Yeah, I have a sense that it's slower than what we would normally see, and I still blame it on the fact that we're 3 weeks away from an election, and I think on November 6th or November 7th, people will get back to normal, and we won't have to put up with any more of the nonsense that we see in TV, on the ads and everything else, so that life can return to somewhat normal.
I agree, and I'm ready for that time. All right, let's hit a couple questions, and then we'll get out of here. You good with that? All right. This is a question. What is the percentage of repos for September? So for repos, I see more and more repos come into dealer auctions every month. The problem with finding a percentage with repos, there's not going to be anyone that's going to be able to report this, because not only do we not know how many repos are on deck to be picked up, how many cars are delinquent, and we don't have enough repo drivers to actually pick them up, but what we also don't know are from all of these buy here, pay here dealers, which are dealers that hold their own notes. You think of on the side of the highway, these dealers that have $9.95 down on their windshield. Bob's Used Cars is not going to report to anyone how many cars they reported in that given month. They're going to pick those cars up, and they're either going to resell them or they're going to send them straight to auction, and their hands are done with it. That's all they're doing with those cars. So we can never, ever, 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 ever know how many repos are actually going through the system. We can look at auto loan delinquencies that are actually getting reported. Repos are actually getting reported, but that's just going to be the tip of the iceberg, because the consumers that we know are going to be more likely to lose their car are the ones that are going to be buying from places who are not going to actually report their car being repossessed. So we will never know, and there will never be a way to know.
And also, they're not going to report to the credit bureaus. So that's correct. That's why if you're a customer of a buy here, pay here store, you will probably always be a customer of a buy here, pay here store.
All right, here we go. All right, if said individual makes $50,000 or $100,000 a year, how much should they spend on a car?
You want to go, or you want me to go?
I'll go. If you're only making $50,000, you should be buying a $2,500 car or a $5,000 car, depending on how much you can save up. The answer is always, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much money you make or how much money you make a year. It all depends on how much you can actually afford. So there can be someone making $100,000 a year, but they got $250,000 in the bank. Yeah, they can go buy a new $25,000, $30,000 car. And it's, if you can go and if you can put all of that money that you're going to spend on the car out on your lawn, set it on fire, and it does not make a material difference to your life, then you can afford that vehicle. It might not feel good, but if it doesn't make a material difference to your life, that means you can afford it. In my opinion, you should not be buying a car that you have to make payments on. I get it. Most people want to have a car payment. They want to have that money come out of their bank account every single month. It feels good to them. It feels normal to them. I get it. Be different. Buy a car that you can afford, that you can pay cash for. But I think Ray's going to agree with me on this. Maybe not the payments part, but the amount of money that you can spend. It doesn't matter how much you make a year. It matters what you can afford.
I do agree with you, but we live in a country that doesn't operate like that for the most part. So that what you just said is more the exception than the rule. The way I encourage people to look at it, if they're going to finance a vehicle, and 85% of all cars that are purchased are financed in one way or another, My rule of thumb is no more than 10% of your gross monthly earnings. So if somebody's making $50,000 a year, let's call it $4,000 a month. That means you can afford $400 a month for your car. That has to include the car payment, the gasoline, the insurance, and the maintenance. And if $400 a month doesn't cover all that, then you can't afford the car. Do what Brandon said. Go find a car that you can buy for $2,500 or $5,000 that you can pay cash for. But no more, the way I look at it, no more than 10% of your gross monthly income should go to a vehicle, including everything it takes to own that vehicle.
Oh, but I have a workaround for this. So what if you also choose to live in your car? Then how much can you spend a month?
Gosh, I'll have to think about that and get back to you next Tuesday. And today, Brandon has put together a whole host of topics, some of which I might like, some of which I might not, that we're going to discuss. And hopefully you find the conversation somewhat educational and entertaining. Where'd you want
And
to
you
start?
make this sound way more professional than it actually is, because we have just a little Word doc and we post some links in there. And I asked Ray 3 minutes ago, Ray, what do you want to talk about today? And that's how that's how this show comes about. And good thing that this portion of the show doesn't get aired other than what you're seeing it right here, because it is not worth watching.
Oh, I beg to differ.
All right. Let's get right into it then. All right. So Ray, let's try again. Nope. Technology's not working with me.
Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Tell every living person you know that they need to subscribe to Car Sense with Brandon and Ray.